Hi and welcome to the Active Code podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Partnerships. I'm Paul Griffiths, and joining me each week on the pod is Luke Johnson.
Aspire Active Partnerships is a community of like-minded business leaders who all believe that collaboration in the sports coaching and children's activity sector is essential for success. We've proven that working in collaboration does benefit business growth and essentially helps more children be more active more often.
To combat physical inactivity, we need organisations that are performing at their very best. Organisations will only operate to high standards if they are led well. So, if we can focus on developing high quality leaders throughout an organisation, not just at the top, customers will experience higher quality services, which means heightened enjoyment levels and increased levels of physical activity. And if we do this at an early age, we know that we can build the foundations for a more active, happier and healthier life. The Active Code investigates what it really takes to be a successful leader and how organisations can combat physical inactivity.
We won't be alone through this journey. We are joined by business owners and experts from our sector, as well as inspirational people from outside our industry. We'll understand the importance of physical activity to our guests, reflect on leadership experiences, and gain thought-provoking insights on how we can crack the Active Code and get more children more active more often. If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and subscribe wherever you get your pods.
Hello and welcome. In today's episode, Luke and I are joined by Andy Heald. Andy brings over 20 years experience in the children's activity sector in numerous roles, including coach, educator, business owner and company director. Andy has implemented high quality coach development programs and solutions to drive success on a national scale. Currently studying a level 7 MBA in leadership and management, Andy has a passion for workforce development, creating strategic partnerships, and is also a qualified and certified football agent. More recently, Andy has been invited to act as Vice Chair of the Community Professional Development Board for the Chartered Institute for the Management of Sport and Physical Activity, commonly known as CIMSPA. Andy, welcome to the Active Code podcast.
Hello guys, you okay?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to it.
No problem at all. Thanks for joining us. Andy, we always start by asking people to share further detail on their professional journey. Can you just take listeners through that, please?
I suppose my professional journey started, I think, if we can go way back in where I grew up, in Leigh. As you can tell from my accent, I'm a northern lad, just outside Wigan, a little town where we grew up on the streets. We used to have it's funny this time of year now with Wimbledon, we used to have our own Wimbledon competitions, and we used to have my street, which was Wash Lane versus Ivydale Drive, and we grew up playing all different sports on the streets with my friends, and that starts, I suppose, the whole kind of professional journey, in that sport, physical activity was kind of paramount to what I was about. I didn't really like school. I said I did enjoy school to an extent, but one of the main reasons I put my head down and got my head down at school was Wigan Athletic used to get our school reports, so it was staying out of trouble and just doing what I could, because I was a footballer. I was on the books with Wigan Athletic as a kid, and then I was unfortunate not to become a professional footballer. So I had to get a job, and that dream of being a professional footballer was diminishing. So I got a job as a soccer assistant, which was basically a glorified cleaner. But I was working in one of the state-of-the-art facilities. It was the first facility in England that had the 3G football pitches indoor. And there was an opportunity to coach within that job, so it was making sure the pitch in the centre ran, but 3 or 4 times a week we was able to coach kids, and we got paid a higher rate for that, and that was even better. But I suppose that's where it all really started, in that I was still playing semi-professional football at the time, so I was generating an income from that, but I was given a responsibility to oversee our football programmes, and I had to recruit coaches. So part and parcel of the role was to, fill these 6-a-side pitches with children. and I had to get coaches in. So, 1997, I was recruiting coaches to deploy them with children. And I think what was really interesting even then was you had level 4 coaches and level 3 coaches, but you couldn't put them with the 5-year-olds. But you could put the new level 1 coach with a 5-year-old. So it was very much learning early on that coaches, it was all about competence, really. And I also then started to do work after school clubs in schools, in Wythenshawe, the middle of Bench Hill with Manchester FA. And again, it was that 30 children were coming running to you who's never kicked a ball before. And so I started to kind of learn early on about, the whole kind of school space, the sports space, I suppose, with football, working in centres. And I moved then into duty management and leisure management, trained as a fitness instructor as the business changed. But my passion I found was in education. So I left the soccer dome and went into a role with an organisation called Central Sports, which was which was really interesting but really exciting. Was working on an entry to employment programme, working with NEETs, and that's where I studied as a teacher. So I studied at night school I got my certificate of education. But I was basically working with 16 to 19-year-olds with barriers to learning, various issues, whether it be drug, alcohol abuse, youth offending, or just learning needs. And it was to use sport as a vehicle to get these young people jobs, whether it be fitness instruction, coaching badges. And it was a period I thoroughly enjoyed. But I still wasn't kind of working on what I was passionate about, which was the coaching children. I suppose I find it, and it annoys some people sometimes, certainly younger coaches, that when I'm working with children or coaching children, I just don't see it as work. It's a really fulfilling role to play, and that you can impact on these kids' lives. And my long-lasting friend, and I suppose that comes back to where it all started, playing football, playing sport, playing tennis, cricket on the streets, was a guy called Daniel Melling. And he went on holiday and came back and said, I've got this fantastic idea. We're going to set our own business up, and we're going to invest in this franchise model. And it was interesting, really, because I had a full-time job, a good salary. I just bought my first house. I've got married. My wife, Laura, was pregnant with son of me, my eldest son. And I don't know what it was, but it was like, okay, I'll do this. Let's do it. So I quit my job and I set the business up. And our vision then was to provide the same opportunities for children in Leigh, where we lived, that we had growing up. And it was crazy how quickly we grew. We hit our targets. I think we hit our 12-month targets in the first 8 weeks. We then have to recruit coaches. And I think the speed of growth, we had to adapt really quickly. And, we was working stupid hours. I was working in the back room of my terraced house, and we was up to all. I was trying to get the business set up and putting systems in, processes in place, but never ran a business before. So it was all new. We made all the accountancy problems. I think we got chased by the VAT man for a couple of things, and we made all the mistakes that a lot of business owners made. But we had this ultimate relentless vision to create these opportunities, and that got recognised, and that was something I was, again, it was a moment in my life where the owner of the franchisor kind of offered me an opportunity to replicate what we'd done in our business locally on a national scale, which seen astronomical growth across a network and an organisation I've worked with for 15 years to really grow. And, we've seen tens and tens of thousands of children active, working in over, I think it was about 16% of England schools, and it was thousands of people deployed. And what was the really proud moment of that is that I had to create training for these coaches, football coaches, gymnastics coaches, cricket coaches, sports degree students, to really understand the environments that we were working in, which was schools, working with children, big groups, boy, girl, SEND children with various barriers, sedentary children that are at academies, and you've got them all at once, and really develop a suite of training to influence that, and products, I suppose, programs that they could deliver to do that. And then systems to measure that. And it was been an unbelievable ride, an unbelievable journey. We broke world records. I think part of the British fencing largest ever session delivered. We went to China. We went out to Denmark, and we was championing it. I was able to present at a number of UK coaching conferences, established big relationships with national governing bodies, helped develop a TT Kids program, and it was ongoing, and it was so fast and rapid. And it was sort of, some amazing experiences to take this vision of getting children active in my hometown to now getting children active right across the country, and seeing the programs he developed that enable to do that has been really, really rewarding. And I suppose that takes me to the point where I am now in my professional journey. Is I want to continue that vision and that drive, but I want to make it even bigger, and I want to continue to improve coaching, whether that be in communities, schools, and you mentioned the work I'm doing with CIMSPA to help drive regulation and qualifications and standards. And it's something, again, I'm really excited about doing. I'm working with organisations, like Aspire and various other companies to really, continue to grow the opportunities for young people. So, yeah, it's been exciting. A bit of a roller coaster at the same time.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Andy. The passion you've got for that really shines through. And you're actually the second world record holder to feature on the pod as well. Just on that, how many people took part in that?
Oh, now you're asking. I think it was about 150 children. We had to lead. I had a microphone, and I had to lead a lesson to 150 children doing fencing. So I'm stood on a stage, and the organisation, and they had to fence for so long. They had to actually do the lesson for a period of time. And I'm like constantly looking, have we broke it yet? Have we done it yet? But yeah, we did it. It was actually in Birmingham as well. We did that at Core Education. It was a really exciting program.
Brilliant stuff. Clearly, physical activity is important to you from your early days with football and street tennis as well. And you've got a vast experience working with children and young people in physical activity. But what does physical activity mean to you personally?
It's huge. I think, you look at the whole kind of physical literacy journey of, the cradle to grave. We didn't have much choice, I suppose, growing up. It's the cliche comment in that we played out. We got in from school, you played outside, and you came home when your mum and dad shouted you to come home. But I was physically active every day. And football was predominantly my sport that I played, but I played all sorts of different sports, whether it be squash, golf. And to this point, I think physical activity, certainly during this COVID pandemic, it's been a roller coaster for a lot of people and different emotions, but it's been the absolute glue to everything for me personally to get through this, and I've been doing that with my own children and friends, and I've been trying to raise money for charities. I've been it's been my release to remain focused and to keep my mental health as much as anything else. So physical activity to me is the absolutely heart of everything I'm about. And it's the same sort of thing I'm trying to instill to my children, but the challenge with them is the digital age kids. So we have to embrace the digital, but at the same time, inspire them to lead an active life themselves, which at the minute I think I'm doing, but it's still a challenge. But yeah, the heart of everything I do.
And what type of physical activity do you schedule into your weekly routine at the moment?
Well, I'm quite structured with it. So I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, but I'll do 2 full body workouts a week, and that's gym based. I will do a HIIT session a week, and then I still try to play football at ripe old age of 41 for a vets team, but then I'll try to have at least a day where I do at least an hour of cardio, whether that be running, biking, walking, to just raise my heart rate. And I think that's the most important thing. I think the enjoyable thing is where I'm very fortunate where I live, where I can get out and about, and I still live where I grew up. What I like doing is going out running and seeing the places where I used to hang out as a kid, and looking at how they've changed, how they've overgrown, what's developed, what used to be there, and just enjoy being outside. Forget about the running aspect of it, really. But yeah, I tend to be active 6 days in the week, with one rest day, sometimes 2, depends how I feel. But mainly, yeah, daily activities important.
And obviously, Andy, on that point, you're very, very active and a lot of structure to it by the sound of it, which is great. From an unstructured perspective, do you have to think about not taking the car to certain short journeys, whether it's a school run, to the shop, etc., or is it all pretty much structured because you've got such a busy routine?
No, I think, like you said, some of it is definitely unstructured. I think if there's an opportunity to, say I've got a couple of phone calls to make, I'll sometimes go, right, rather than be sat here at my desk, I'll off the cuff, I'll put my shoes on, put my trainers on, and I'll take the call whilst walking or jogging. I think it's just, sometimes it's like you said, it's looking at if it's a nice morning, rather than get in the car, we'll walk to school, we'll bike to school. So it's as much as I do have the structured stuff, it's sometimes, it's very much off the cuff. I read a book by BJ Fogg called Tiny Habits, and he talks a lot about how you can kind of get physically active, but you can, it's about attaching something to it. So, and that's that unstructured time. So, little things like we did in lockdown, every time I put the kettle on, I still do it now, is you do 10 press-ups every time you put the kettle on. It's little things. So it's not always structured. It is unstructured. And I've got my middle lad at the minute. He seems to be he wants to do 20 press-ups and 20 press-ups every night sit-ups every night before he goes to bed. But yeah, hopefully that's rubbing off on him now.
What we're talking, cups of tea a day, then we're talking like 500 press-ups a day on that point, or we just 20, 30?
Coffee in the morning and then about 3. I'm trying to stay off the coffee at the minute. I'm on green tea, so it's about 4 or 5 a day.
And in terms of the benefits, you've mentioned before, like it's the glue that kind of got you through the pandemic and kept things sane, as it was to a lot of people, both that we've spoke to on the podcast and friends, family that I know. It's everyone seemed to get more physically active through that period, for a point anyway. From a benefits point of view, you mentioned like mental health is one of those angles, and I'm assuming physical health as well, judging from the structured activity that you do. Can you go a bit more detail on that from a mental health perspective? What happens if you can't fit that structured routine in? If something comes up, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, and personally, if I don't manage to train or to get it in, sometimes it does eat away at me a little bit. But I think what I have learned is not to worry about it, and even if I can't get to the gym, I'll like I've said to you, I'll just try and just raise my heart rate. I just try to get out and do at least 15 minutes and get my heart rate up to about 160 beats per minute. And that's, if you've got an iWatch. But I think the well-being factor, it's just, I don't know. I think it's just been, I've really enjoyed talking to people again, more than ever before. I think, again, that's another COVID lesson is, going out for walks with people, not going to the gym, just going out on a walk, just arranging to meet on a halfway point just to do something. I did, when I was doing a lot of the running, I was quite vocal on social media to say, it's a lot of what I kind of said before about the tiny habits example. It's not stressing about the times that you do. It's not stressing about how much weight you can lift, how much time you spend in the gym. And I think that's what helps me, in that as long as I do something that moves me, be able to take my headspace away from this laptop and get some fresh air, then I'm happy. It doesn't have to be vigorous. It doesn't have to be intense. I'm no longer training to be an elite sports person. It's very much just that release.
Yeah, I'm guessing also, Andy, given that you were playing for a vets football team, it probably means you can recover quicker and keep that career going a few more years.
Andy, you clearly understand the benefits of physical activity that has on yourself, but also others. But how would you promote physical activity to those that don't understand or haven't experienced, positive times with physical activity or sports?
Release the stigma. I think and that's what I've tried to say to a lot of, a good friend of mine I've grown up with he's like, Andy, I'd love to come running with you and do this, but you're too fast or your times are too, and I'm like, right, let's just stop. Forget the times. If you want to come running with me, we'll go and we'll just start walking. And I think it's taking that element of, it's a bit like saying to somebody, right, quit smoking, and tomorrow they quit, but the following day they're back smoking again. Or saying, it's the cliche one of, I'm starting a diet. My wife starts a diet every week, and it just makes me laugh because I'm like, well, she doesn't need to do it, go on a diet, but she wants to. And it's like, well, they go from point A to point Z overnight, and it just doesn't work. It's about taking small steps. And, like I mentioned, the kettle example is, anybody listening, try it every time you put the kettle on, or find an attachment, just walk on the spot fast, or lift your knees up, or lean on the bench, or just do something that gets you moving. And if you've done that every day, that sense of achievement and satisfaction is what you should be proud of. And I think I always say to you, the best feeling for me isn't the running, isn't the exercise. It's what happens afterwards that gives you that sense of achievement. And that's the motivator for me. It's the fact that you've managed to change something and there's a catalyst. It's not about how fast you go, or how much you lift, or how many calories you've burned. It's very much about the achievement of I've actually set out to do something and I've achieved it. And that could just be a walk around the block. And that'd be my best advice to anybody is just make it simple and don't stress and don't worry about sharing it on social media and what your mates are doing. Just make it about yourself.
And Andy, you mentioned at the start about you shared your journey with us from a professional perspective and the work that you've done on the workforce development perspective and the competence of coaches that obviously is something we need to work on for those people working with children. So if we're looking at children who aren't engaging in sport and we're trying to encourage them to be more physically active, let's start delving into that side of things. So what needs to happen? Well, in fact, let's rewind it a little bit. What are the current problems, in your opinion, on the workforce environment for those people working in the children's activity sector?
Well, we've got enough time. Again, I just think from my experience, and I suppose there's a lot of nonsense in there. There's a lot of confusion out there of what do I listen to. So if I take the school space and I'm a head teacher in a school, is who am I listening to? Do I listen to the DFE? Do I listen to the Association for PE? Do I listen to the Youth Sport Trust? Do I listen to CIMSPA? Do I listen to the governing bodies of sport? they've now got sport premium, and it's still, up until last week, I was talking to a lady to say, right, well, can I spend the premium on this? And I'm like, but why would you do that? It's just that lack of confusion, of lack of clarity and confusion in what we're trying to achieve. And I think it reflects back to what we've just been saying about the physical activity sector, certainly around children, is if we take sport and we take community clubs, one of the frustrations is the sport is, and I use the Simon Sinek model of why is it's focused on the winning, the losing still, the technique, the tactics, the technical. Now, don't get me wrong, the tactical and technical is really important for children, showing them the correct techniques. However, if I then think about, and I think this is where potentially coaches don't quite understand though, is if as a parent, my children go to football, rugby, gymnastics, dance, so on and so on, I don't send them to be better footballers or rugby players or gymnasts. I send them so they can socialise. I send them to be physically active. Yet the coaches focus purely on the hands bit. And then when you take that into schools, and there's this emphasis on, and I don't mean this by any way, because teachers teaching PE in primary schools, I'm a believer of. I think teachers should teach PE, but the problem we've got is there's a skills gap and there's a confidence gap. So not every school's the same. So we can really think about it and go, well, in my school as a head teacher, these are my priority areas. These are my school improvement priority areas. This is my school vision. This is what the national curriculum says. This is my demographic. These are my parents. These are the types of children that we have in our school. And this is the qualities and skills of my staff. So if they decide that using a coach in school will be beneficial for them, then do that. But the key thing to it is understanding the whole, well, how do we get the children physically active? What are the initiatives that we can bring in, whether that be during break times? What are our welfare staff doing at break times? Getting the teachers to understand not just the teaching and the activity ideas and being obsessed with schemes of work, but thinking about the learning of children. You don't have to be studying a PE lesson for an hour as a teacher to understand the learning of children's physical activity. You could go and spend your coffee break on the playground looking at your children and how are they being physically active with their friends. And I think it's about simplifying the message. And that's why I love the Sport England strategy, where it's a relentless focus on positive experiences for children in a physical activity sense. But my worry is that there is still that lack of clarity. So you've got a Sport England simple, clear objective, but these multiple methods, these multiple ideas, these multiple products out there that can achieve that. But it's about giving head teachers who are, brilliant as leaders, the skill set, the knowledge, the understanding to actually make a justifiable decision that isn't a worrying decision to say, oh, I've got money, I've got to spend it and it's ring fenced. Okay, let's relax. And I might be getting a little bit political here, but it's to remove the confusion. And then the same with coaches in the community setting. Again, is coach the children, coach the person, don't coach the sport.
And how do we fix that, Andy? If you're looking at it from a non-teacher's perspective, so from a coaching workforce point of view, and those people that do great work, whether it's in community clubs or in the school environment, how do we combat that? How do we make sure they are understanding, whether it's in PE supporting teachers in lessons or if it's engaging children in lunchtime activities or after school clubs? How do we make sure that the emphasis is on fun and not developing the sport specific skills? Because I think that often comes across from NGB qualifications and the various levels that they go through. It's almost too sport specific, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose this is the work we're trying to do with CIMSPA. I think is the new occupational standards have been written to look at coaching children. The new environmental occupational standards have been written. So if you're a coach working with children in school, if you're a coach working in a community setting with children, and I think there's this work that it's going to be a huge piece of work, but I think it's the buy-in from national governing bodies of sport to provide education to the coaches and coaching workforce. And I think this is, I suppose, going back to the start of my journey with the in the franchising is we focused on the coaches not talking too much as a simple suggestion to let the sessions flow with pace and be organised with it. Find things that they enjoy. And I think it's that education piece to the deliverers of physical activity and sport to children. You know, it's not very, if you take the plan, do, review model of running activities that you would typically do on an NGB course is add a top and tail to that is before I plan, why am I doing it? Who am I working with? What's the focus? Why am I actually going to be delivering this session to this group? Whether that be PE, community. And then at the end of it, once I've reviewed it, what impact has that had? How do we know that what I've actually done has generated the end point and the data or the information that we need? And I think that's a big education piece around working with children. And of course, there'll always be that space for just running activities. But I think it's professionalising the sector a little bit. I think one. I think it's really giving the role of those people that do run activities with children, you know, more importance, and celebrating the work they do. You know, a lot of it is a voluntary sector, and we'd hate to lose it. I think that's the risk of this is we can't lose those volunteers because they're amazing at what they do. But I think if there was a knowledge piece around how, as volunteers, they can be more impactful, then. So it's a big piece of work, but
when you say professionalising the sector, so dig a bit deeper on that one. So what does that look like? What does the ideal professionalised sector look like?
I think regulation, for one. I think there's got to be some form of leaders of organisations, whether you're a leader in a community-based club, if you're a leader of a school, if you're a leader of a coaching provider, let's say, there has got to be some form of measurement and regulation on the knowledge, skills and competencies of the people that are deployed. But at the same time, like I've said to you, that can't be at the detriment of the volunteers, and it can't be something that's too difficult to do. But there's got to be some ethical leadership in making sure that you're deploying the right person. And it's not to say that I'm a national governing body football coach and I'm going in delivering gymnastics. And we can't do that. And somehow, somewhere, and I think this is where there's certainly again, if we use the school space, is what is it that as a head teacher, as a school, I should be asking and requesting from people who are coming doing this? How do I then upskill my internal workforce, if I'm getting my teachers, to deliver outstanding practice? And that's what I think is required. And utilising, you know, how FE and HE institutes deliver their courses, you know, aligning those qualifications to the new standards, and supporting what the end goal for these people might be. That if it is working with children, then this is the start, and this is what they need to learn.
I just think we need to get rid of that stigma as well. I think that stigma has probably been around for about 20 years now with regards to coaches supporting schools.
Yeah, definitely. I've got coach bashing, and it does annoy me. I find it insulting at times when I've been to certain conferences and listened to people speak. It can be quite annoying. And having worked in a sector for, 20 years almost, to professionalize and to regulate, to support the people within this space. And I've seen some amazing people who have had outstanding impact. Like last week, I had a message from my auntie, about a nephew, about one of the coaches, and she's like, he's changed all his confidence, and he's so powerful. And I think, and that's the power of what these people, what people can do. I think it's like saying it's getting coaches to really understand the impact that these people can have, not right here, right now, not next week, not tomorrow, but for the rest of their lives. And that's where it just gets a little bit frustrating to say, well, coaches can't do this and coaches need to stay in the box. And no, we're all human beings, and it's about interacting with people better. And I think there's no better, going back to the point at the start where I said it's not like working. I don't class it as a job working with young people, because you've got that opportunity to remain a memory in that child's life forever.
Andy, when you look back on your 20 years experience, and in particular from a leadership perspective, what are your proudest achievements to date? And you can't use the world record because we've already used that.
My proudest achievements to date are the legacy of the previous organisation I've left with, the legacy of programs and systems, and it was the people that are running and working within this sector who are championing some of the things that I've worked with them on, and they continue to champion that every single day. That's something that makes me proud. I think I like to get my hands on as well. So a massive proud moment for me at the minute is I have my eldest son. I started running his football team when he turned 4, and I started off with I think we ended up with about 35 children attending, and I had to then get some parents to volunteer. And a proud moment is that I've still got the majority of that entire team now at 14 years of age, and I use them as a wine. That they're all doing well at school. They're currently staying out of trouble, and I look forward to sharing a pint with them when they're 18, and hopefully helping them to get the first jobs. And that's something I'm really proud about, and the parents of those children often say, Andy, the impact you've had on them is far more greater than football. And the teams, the other 2 teams that are running, they still run as well. And those coaches have a similar mentality and approach to what I've had. And so they're the proud things, I suppose. The big thing is the legacy that's left. And then on a more local level, it's I suppose putting my money where my mouth is doing it and proving this model works.
Amazing. And just going back to the franchise, the early days of your franchise, what led to that quick growth that you described? If you had to pick, say, 3 things that really did influence that, what would you pick?
Values, vision, honesty, transparency, and do what you say you're going to do, I suppose. I suppose it's not one word, but and it's that professionalism to say, I'm going to do this. We're going to do it then, and this is how we celebrate it. And I think that was the absolute key to the success, and making sure that everybody knew what that vision was. And everybody's singing from the same.
Would you share that vision not only with your team but with your customers as well?
100%. 100%. I think, and I think that's where, again, going back to some of the discussions we've had throughout this, is every single school will have a vision statement, a mission statement, values, and it's about thinking about those when working with schools, or, you know, the same with clubs. And again, are the coaches, the teachers, if you're using a provider, are they aligned to what the school want, and how do the two meet? And I think that's absolutely key. Absolutely key to sharing what your objective and goal is and why you're doing it.
And you went through some, you know, amazing achievements there from the past 20 years or so. What would you say are the biggest leadership challenges you've had during that time?
The biggest leadership challenges is, of course, around people. And certainly within this space, this sector, it's extremely difficult. I think what you're constantly doing, you're constantly inspiring and developing people. And I think I suppose this is another one of the proudest moments is that, you know, you take members of staff or new coaches on board or new people on board, and you work with them and develop them both personally and professionally. But they leave, and there's a ceiling to it, and they're leaving to become teachers. And I think that's when you get the coach bashing, as I mentioned before. And sometimes some people will say they don't mean this coach bashing, and you'll hear the word often say, well, we know there's some good coaches out there. There's a lot of very good coaches out there if they're given the right support and training and development. But going back to the original point, is the challenge is the retention of these good people. I can tell you many stories, but, you know, I had a guy that was amazing with young people, amazing, and was loved by families, loved by parents, loved by many, many children, loved by the schools he operated in. And he was a coach, he was a qualified coach that understood the vision. And he wanted to start a family. And he left to get a job behind a desk in a recruitment agency. Now, as much as I was devastated, and the biggest thing that, and I've used that example before, is the sector lost that person. I didn't lose him. My organisation didn't lose him. The entire sector and all those thousands and thousands of children he interacted with, that's who lost that person. And that was something I had no control over, because there's a limit, there's a ceiling to what they can do, and again, that's something I'd love to change. I'd love to change, to try and look at what that journey may look like for that person in the future, so that doesn't happen again.
So would that be sports coaches, for example, making a career rather than using it maybe as a stepping stone or a kind of stopgap in their early 20s, for example? Yeah,
he's looking at the career pathway. We've got the new level 4, new apprenticeship coach standard coming out at present, and it's an amazing, amazing standard, very, very complex. The information in there around the standards, you know, delivered correctly, is going to create some amazing coaches or amazing people working in whatever environment they move into. But then they've got to be able to, you know, if they are going to get a career in this, you know, well, what does the journey look like? So if I start off as a coach here, you know, am I going to be moving into teaching? Am I going to be moving into coach education? Am I going to be moving into leadership? But I don't think that pathway is mapped well enough. Where, you know, as you know, many degree students are coming out of university in this coaching space, and finding it difficult to grasp the work. So it's a big. There's a lot of work to be done, but I think it's if we can get the pathways right and the journey right, you know, hopefully we'll retain more people, and people can get a career out of this. And, you know, I've got a career out of it. It's been my life. But what's happened is I've seen that's gone into a leadership journey and a coach development journey. Albeit I still coach, but it's really understanding what that is. And I think that's that again, going back to the coaches, why are you doing what you're doing? And where do you want to go with it?
Yeah, completely agree with you on that, Andy. And it's a big leadership piece, I think, isn't it, from the whole sector? But on that point as well, from a leadership perspective in the sector itself, it needs to change clearly. But what in particular needs changing if we take the whole activity sector, children's activity sector? Again, I know we could probably talk about this for a good hour or so. But is there one thing that if you could point your finger to it, what needs to change in the children's activity sector in order for that leadership piece to get better?
Clarity in the school space. Total clarity, and a top body, somebody making a decision without the discrepancies. I've seen last week 2 separate pieces of information from leaders in our sector that totally go against each other. So if I'm one head teacher reading that paper and I'm a head teacher reading that paper, I'm now confused again. And there's an opportunity to actually get this right. To come away from the coach cannot do this, cannot do that. I don't know why the coach cannot do, let's say, working in a curricular-based setting. I understand that as a coach, they shouldn't be left alone in a curricular-based setting. But again, I don't understand the reasons and why behind that. Because then Sport England is a relentless focus on positive experiences for young people. We can achieve that collaboratively. And I think that has got to be the biggest focus, to provide clarity. Clarity as a coach. What are the qualifications that I need to work in this environment? What's the journey I can go on to get a career? If into PE teaching or whether I go into coach education. As a leader of a school, an organisation, again, what are the things that I'm looking for in people? What are the qualifications I'm looking for? What are the systems I need to have in place to ensure we've got the right people? And then whilst we're doing that, remove the bureaucracy of opinions. And that's no easy feat. But that for me is, in a way, you're simplifying it. You are simplifying a lot of it with clarity.
There's probably 2 overseas in there as well. It's probably communication is a big one, and probably collaboration as well. So it's probably all 3 of those, if they're brought together from the very top and filtered down through the various sectors, whether that's in the coaching sector, in the education space, in the community recreational areas, NGBs. I think it's time to really have a bit of a shift on that and get as many people on the same page as possible, I guess, because everyone seems at loggerheads at times. It's a bit frustrating.
And I think there's an opportunity, Paul. I think there's a great opportunity. We seen last night with the England game and the camaraderie and the togetherness and the fans. And I think people might say, I hate using COVID for everything, but post-COVID, there is that opportunity for people to really pull together, because we've seen how hard it is. And why not now? We 100% have got sedentary children. We've got schools, we've got a child at home isolated now. We've got all these barriers. This is an opportunity. It's the best opportunity to get it right and move forward as a collaborative network to, create an unrelenting focus on positive experiences for young people.
Andy, is there anything from outside of our sector do you think organisations and leaders could use or transfer into our sector to combat physical inactivity? I'll give you an example. I think it was on Martina's podcast in Series 1. She referenced the gaming industry and how that's really hooked in and embedded in children's lives now. Now, obviously, there needs to be the right balance, but the gaming industry has definitely got it right because, a very high percentage of children access that that industry, don't they?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a really good point, and thanks for picking it up, because it has resonated with me in terms of gamifying things, and I think it's going back to the point of I've got digital age kids. My youngest Daisy last night after the England game, it was right back to bed, and as I'm going upstairs to check she's in bed and she's brushed her teeth, she's sat on the iPad, so she got told off. But it's that draw, so it's how can that be used to enhance activity? There's lots of apps and ideas out there, but I've got some ideas around how schools can use such systems. I know they have like class dojos and that sort of thing, but how can they be used? How can parents interact? I always use again, it's another good point. In one of the there was a quote in one of the Generation Inactive documents from UK Active around, we measure children's literacy and numeracy skills, but we don't measure things that could potentially kill them, hence around physical activity. And again, it's something along those. I've seen some apps out there like My Move and various other things, but I think trying to use the gamifying things and applications, technical enhancements to work with young people in schools.
Andy, you've obviously said at the start in the intro that you're currently studying your level 7 MBA, Leadership and Management, and clearly from this conversation, your own personal development and the development of others is ultra important to you. If listeners wanted to enhance their skills or business function, what free books or podcasts would you recommend to them?
These are the Matthew Syed's Bounce is always that was one of the best books I ever read, and then followed up by his Black Box Principle. It was there were two outstanding books. Carol Dweck's Mindset, I think, is a no-brainer for everybody to understand how people operate and how to influence people. But I've mentioned it again. One of the biggest ones I've done recently was the BJ Fogg Tiny Habits. Really, really powerful. But I think anybody looking to self-development, I use LinkedIn Learning a lot. I don't think there's anything on there that you cannot actually access. It's a brilliant, brilliant platform for learning, and I'd certainly look into the apprenticeships. Apprenticeships have come up, and then that's what I've gone through. I've gone through a level 7 apprenticeship pathway, and sometimes you think about apprenticeships as that, well, it's for young people. Well, at 41 years of age, I'm an apprentice, and I'm doing the level 7 MBA, and it's been an unbelievable learning experience that has, in combination with COVID and various other things going on, has kept me grounded, and the new things I've learned has been amazing.
Yeah, definitely the message is keep learning no matter what age we are. Andy, the final question we ask everybody is, what one thing, and you can only pick one, does the sector need to do to get more children more active more often and crack the active code?
One thing: collaborate and be clear on what are we all trying to achieve.
And if listeners want to get in touch, find out a bit more about you, where can they find you and connect?
Best at the minute via email. So I'm currently working on a consultancy based level, but yeah, emails are the best form. So it's andy.heald, dead simple, at iCloud.com.
Brilliant. And people can find you on LinkedIn and watch your outdoor videos you recorded over lockdown as well. Yeah,
of course. You can check them out. I promise not to bore you.
Thanks very much, Andy. I really appreciate your time on the podcast. We could have gone on, I think, for at least another episode there. There's some really, really good conversations, and a couple of times where I wanted to go a bit deeper, but I was just conscious of time. So I think it's probably getting you back on at some point in the future. It's been great to hear about your journey, and the links that you still have with local community, I think, are great. And the story about with your lads football team and helping them grow and develop just shows, I think, the kind of person you are and the importance that you hang on this sector, and the importance of children being physically active, not just from a sporting context, but for their own well-being and their confidence and all the soft skill development. It's something to be very proud of. It's clear, I think, that you found your why. I know we spoke about that a lot during the pod, and you're doing an incredibly good job at helping others find their why too, whether that's at a local level or on a national scale as well. So keep up the great work. I think there's big things ahead, especially with the work that you're doing with CIMSPA, to really drive those standards in the children's activity sector for the better. So thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. And speak soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
Join us next time for the Active Code podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with us on Twitter at aspire_partners and find out more about us and the network at www.aspireactivepartnerships.co.uk.